The modern Amazon suddenly receiving a predator it has not seen for almost 60 million years. No cage. No warning, no scientist watching from a safe helicopter. Just a 50-foot snake, heavier than a small car, sliding into one of the most competitive ecosystems on Earth. At first, the jungle would not even understand what had arrived. Fish would scatter, caimans would freeze. Capybaras would keep drinking because they would not yet know that the shape under the water is not a log. Then the river would move. One strike, one coil, one mistake. And the biggest living animals in the Amazon would discover that an extinct monster has entered their world. But here is the real question. Would Titanoboa become the king of the modern rainforest? Or would the Amazon slowly break it apart with heat, hunger, disease, humans, and competition? This is not just a monster story. This is a survival test. If a prehistoric giant snake came back today, the jungle would not bow immediately. It would challenge it every single day. Titanoboa was not a dinosaur. It was something quieter, lower to the ground. And in many ways more terrifying. It was a prehistoric snake that lived after the dinosaurs disappeared. In a world where tropical forests were hotter, wetter, and packed with reptiles that could grow to absurd sizes. Based on fossils found in South America, Titanoboa may have reached around 40 to 50 feet long and weighed more than a ton. That means the largest modern anaconda would look impressive beside it, but not equal. An anaconda is already one of the strongest predators in the Amazon. Titanoboa would be the upgraded nightmare version. Longer, heavier, and built for a warmer world. It had no venom, no claws, no roar, and no need to chase prey across open ground. Its weapon was patience. A snake like this does not win by speed over distance. It wins by positioning. It waits where animals must come. Shallow water, riverbanks, flooded trails, drinking spots, muddy crossings. Then it launches from concealment with enough force to lock onto the head, neck, or torso. The teeth are not made for chewing. They are hooks. Once they sink in, pulling away only makes the bite worse. Then the coils arrive. This is where the real power is. A giant constrictor does not simply squeeze until the prey runs out of air like an old cartoon. It can compress the chest, interrupt blood flow, and shut down the body with brutal efficiency. Every time the prey exhales, the coils tighten. Every movement makes the trap worse. Against fish, birds, small mammals, caimans, capybaras, and even tapirs. This strategy can be devastating, but Titanoboa's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness. It is cold-blooded. It does not generate its own body heat like a jaguar, a human, or a bear. It depends on the environment to warm up. Cool down, digest, hunt, and move properly. In its original world, that may have been perfect. In the modern Amazon, it becomes the first major test. The Amazon is hot, but not always hot enough in the exact way Titanoboa would need. Nights cool down, rainstorms drop temperatures, deep water can steal heat from the body. A giant snake can become too cold to hunt. But it can also overheat because a body that massive stores heat for a long time. So before Titanoboa even meets a rival predator, it is already fighting physics. The modern Amazon is not just a buffet, it is a machine. And Titanoboa has been dropped into it millions of years too late. Now place Titanoboa into the Amazon today. Not into a fantasy jungle, but into the real one. The modern Amazon is warm, wet, crowded, and dangerous. But it is not empty space waiting for a prehistoric king. Every inch is already claimed by something. The river has fish that bite, sting, hide, migrate, and school in huge numbers. The banks have capybaras, peccaries, tapirs, monkeys, deer, birds, and reptiles. The water already belongs to anacondas, caimans. Giant otters, electric eels, piranhas, and black caimans that can grow large enough to make almost anything think twice. On land, the jaguar is the top hunter. It is not the biggest animal in the forest, but it is one of the most efficient killers in the Americas, and it has a special talent for attacking skulls. A young Titanoboa would be in real danger from jaguars, large caimans, and even other giant snakes. A baby or juvenile would not arrive as an apex predator. It would arrive as meat with potential. But if we imagine an adult Titanoboa appearing in the river system, the story changes immediately. The Amazon would offer plenty of prey, Capybaras gather near water. Caimans patrol the shallows. Tapirs visit riverbanks at dusk. Fish concentrate in pools during dry periods. Large prey would be available, and Titanoboa would not need to eat every day. A single huge meal could fuel it for weeks. That is a major advantage. Mammalian predators must hunt often. A giant constrictor can eat, disappear, digest, and return when the river has almost forgotten it was there. But digestion creates vulnerability. After swallowing a large prey animal, Titanoboa would become slow, bloated and less able to escape. In the ancient world, that may have been manageable. In the modern Amazon, humans complicate everything. A snake of this size would not stay secret for long. Fishermen would see impossible tracks in mud. River communities would find missing dogs, livestock, or even large wild animals half dragged into the water. Drone footage would spread online before biologists even arrived. The first human reaction would not be calm scientific curiosity. It would be fear, and fear changes ecosystems faster than any predator. Boats would avoid certain channels. Hunters would enter the area. Authorities would try to capture, relocate, protect, or kill it depending on where it appeared. So Titanoboa's survival would not only depend on prey and temperature. It would depend on whether it could remain hidden in a world full of cameras, boats, satellite mapping, and people who do not like sharing water with a 1-ton snake. The Amazon might feed Titanoboa, but modern humanity might expose it. In the first days, Titanoboa would not hunt the biggest thing it sees. A smart predator does not prove itself by choosing the most dangerous prey first. It survives by taking easy wins. Fish would be the safest food, large river fish, catfish. And slow-moving animals trapped in shallow water would help it adapt to the modern river without risking a broken jaw. Torn skin or a fatal bite from a caiman, then it would move up. Young capybaras, water birds, small caimans. Peccaries caught at the edge of flooded forest. The Amazon would start changing in small ways before anyone realized why. Drinking spots would become quieter. Capybaras might avoid certain banks. Caimans would stop basking near deep pools. Birds would explode from trees whenever the water shifted. But Titanoboa would not instantly dominate the entire Amazon. That is too simple. It would dominate a zone, a bend in the river, a flooded lake. A channel where prey arrives regularly and the water temperature is favorable. Apex predators rarely rule everything. They rule patterns. They know where food moves, when animals drink, when the sun warms a log, when the current carries scent. When the mud hides their body. Titanoboa's first kingdom would probably be an oxbow lake or a slow river channel. Somewhere with warm, shallow edges, deep hiding spots, and enough prey to justify staying. Once it established that territory, the consequences would build. Smaller predators would avoid the area. Anacondas would relocate if they could. Caimans would become cautious. Jaguars might still pass through, but they would be careful near the water. And prey animals would learn that is important. The Amazon is not stupid. Animals that survive do so because they update their behavior. If capybaras keep disappearing at one bank, the herd drinks somewhere else. If tapirs smell death in a channel, they change trails. If caimans lose territory, they move downstream. Titanoboa would be powerful, but its prey would not line up to be eaten. Over time, the giant snake's biggest problem might not be fighting. It might be finding enough large meals without revealing its pattern. A 1-ton snake needs big rewards. Small fish are not enough forever. To maintain that body, it needs substantial prey, large mammals, reptiles, or repeated medium-sized kills. If prey learns to avoid its best ambush points, Titanoboa must travel. Traveling is risky. On land, it is slower. In open shallows, it is visible. In colder rain, it becomes sluggish. During dry season, water levels shrink, prey concentrates, and opportunities increase. But so does danger. A drying pool can trap a giant snake the same way it traps fish. The same season that offers easy meals can become a death sentence if the water disappears too fast. So the simulation becomes more interesting. Titanoboa can kill almost anything it can catch. The question is whether it can keep catching enough without being trapped by the modern Amazon's seasonal rhythm. The first serious battle would not be against a lion, a bear, an elephant, or a great white shark. Because those animals do not live in the Amazon, the real first boss is the black caiman. A large black caiman is armored, explosive and armed with jaws that can destroy bone. It is not a helpless victim if Titanoboa attacks from the wrong angle. The caiman can twist, bite, and tear into the snake's body. A bite to the head could end the fight instantly. But if Titanoboa gets the first clean grip behind the skull or around the torso, the caiman is in trouble. The fight would be slow, violent, and ugly. The caiman would roll, the snake would tighten, the water would churn. Fish would vanish, birds would lift from the trees. For several minutes there would be no clear winner. But size matters. If Titanoboa is fully grown and healthy, it likely has the advantage in a planned ambush. Not in a fair fight. Nature does not care about fair fights, it cares about first contact, if Titanoboa chooses the moment. The black caiman can become food. If the caiman chooses the moment, the snake can die. The jaguar is a different threat. A jaguar would probably not attack an adult Titanoboa in deep water. That is suicide, but on land. When the snake is cold, digesting, or moving between pools, the jaguar becomes dangerous. Jaguars specialize in precision. They do not need to wrestle the whole body. They need one perfect bite to the skull against a juvenile Titanoboa. A jaguar could absolutely win. Against an adult, the jaguar would have to be desperate or extremely lucky. One coil around the cat's ribs, and the fight becomes a countdown. So most jaguars would do what intelligent predators do. Avoid unnecessary risk. The anaconda matchup would be more personal. A green anaconda is already designed for this world. It knows the currents, the prey, the hiding places, and the seasonal changes. It does not need to be larger to be dangerous. A large anaconda could challenge a young Titanoboa, steal kills, or compete for the same ambush zones. But once Titanoboa reaches full size, the contest becomes unequal. The anaconda may be better adapted to the modern Amazon. But Titanoboa carries overwhelming mass. In a direct constrictor battle, that mass could decide everything. Now for the viral fantasy matchups. A lion would be terrifying on open land, but against Titanoboa near water. The lion is in the wrong movie. It depends on speed, claws, and a throat bite. If it gets dragged into water and coiled, it loses. A bear is more complicated. A large bear has weight, claws, endurance, and the ability to rip tissue apart. On dry land, a big bear could seriously injure Titanoboa, especially if it targets the head. In water or mud, the snake's chances rise dramatically. An elephant is almost impossible prey for Titanoboa. Even a giant snake would struggle to control that much mass, and an adult elephant could crush it simply by stepping wrong. A young elephant near deep water would be more vulnerable, but an adult elephant is too large, too powerful, and too dangerous to be a practical target. A hippopotamus would be one of the worst possible opponents. It is not an Amazon animal, but if we compare them, a hippo's body mass, aggression, and enormous jaws make it a nightmare. Titanoboa might ambush a smaller hippo in theory, but an adult hippo could bite through flesh and muscle with catastrophic force. A great white shark is another wrong environment matchup, in open ocean. The shark wins because Titanoboa is not built for marine pursuit or shark attacks. In shallow freshwater, the shark does not belong. The winner depends almost entirely on where the fight happens. That is the honest answer most monster videos skip. Animals are not video game characters with fixed power levels. Environment is everything. And in the Amazon, Titanoboa's most important enemy would not be a famous predator from another continent. It would be humans. Humans would not fight it with teeth or claws. They would use boats, rifles, traps, drones, news helicopters, conservation teams, and fear. If Titanoboa takes livestock, attacks a person, blocks a fishing area, or becomes a viral threat, its life changes overnight. It could be protected as the discovery of the century, or hunted as a danger. Either way, it loses privacy, and privacy is what ambush predators need most. The final battle for Titanoboa is not against the strongest animal. It is against attention. So, could Titanoboa survive in the Amazon today? The answer is yes, but not everywhere, not easily, and not like an unstoppable movie monster. A healthy adult Titanoboa placed in the right part of the Amazon could survive for years. It would have prey. It would have cover. It would have water, heat, and ambush opportunities. It could dominate a local river system so completely that animals would change their behavior around it. Capybaras would avoid certain banks. Caimans would abandon certain pools. Anacondas would retreat into smaller channels. Tapirs would become more cautious at dusk. For a while, the ecosystem would bend around this one giant predator. But bending is not the same as breaking. The Amazon is too large, too complex, and too resilient to collapse because of a single snake. Titanoboa would not destroy the rainforest. It would create a moving zone of fear. Its territory would become quieter. Riskier and more expensive for other animals to use, but the wider ecosystem would adapt. Prey would shift. Predators would avoid it. Scavengers would benefit from leftovers. Scientists would argue about whether to protect it. Study it or remove it. The bigger problem is long-term survival. Titanoboa evolved for a different climate. If modern temperatures are slightly too cool in some areas, it may grow slower, digest less efficiently, or become vulnerable during storms and cooler nights if temperatures rise too much. Overheating becomes a real danger for an animal that large. If dry seasons intensify, it may get trapped moving between shrinking pools. If humans find it, the situation becomes unpredictable. One viral video could bring researchers, tourists, poachers, soldiers, and television crews into the same river system. That kind of attention can kill an animal even when nobody intends to. And reproduction is another question. One Titanoboa can become a legend. A breeding population needs enough adults, enough territory, enough prey, and enough safe nesting or birthing conditions to continue for generations. That is much harder. A single adult could survive. A small group might survive in a protected, remote, warm wetland with limited human pressure, but a large, stable Titanoboa population spreading across the Amazon would be unlikely unless the climate, prey supply, and human response all lined up perfectly. In the end, Titanoboa would not be a guaranteed ruler or a guaranteed failure. It would be a biological gamble, too powerful to ignore, too vulnerable to call invincible. It could kill a black caiman, scare off jaguars, swallow tapirs, and turn a quiet river bend into the most dangerous water in South America. But it could also die from cold stress, overheating, starvation after prey patterns change, injury during a caiman fight, infection, drought, or a human decision made from fear. That is what makes this scenario fascinating. Titanoboa would not simply arrive and conquer. It would have to negotiate with the modern world, one meal, one season, one riverbank at a time, and maybe on a warm night deep in the Amazon. When the insects are screaming and the water is perfectly still, a capybara would step down to drink. The moon would catch one ripple moving against the current, and for a few seconds, the modern rainforest would feel ancient again. If you enjoy simulations like this, follow the channel. Because the next prehistoric animal we drop into the modern world might not be a snake. It might be something faster, louder, and much harder to hide from.